I read Stephen King's very first published book, Carrie. How does it hold up? Let's talk about it. Okay, well, let's make that coffee. Today is June 10th, Tuesday. 10 days of nonstop gloom. Just cloudy, gloomy, cold weather. It's like when I think of summer, I think of sun and fun. June gloom, man. It's been brutal. But anyways, let's make that cup of coffee. What is this book about? Well, it's basically about this girl named Carrie, this high school girl. And she's got some unique powers, specifically telekinesis. She can move things with the power of her mind. She gets bullied a lot at school. And not only bullied by fellow students and even teachers, but by her mom. Her mom is manipulative, controlling, and quite scary. And she kind of has morphed and carved Carrie to be this specific person, not allowing Carrie to be herself, to think for herself. And then one thing happens after another, and the events of the book lead to prom night. That's when something big happens. And my gosh, wow. Today I will be using Trader Joe's organic wake up blend. I think it's good for French press and just, it's a simple, good cup of coffee. It's not like, high quality, but it's serviceable. Normally I use a tablespoon, but this is just a little easier. I absolutely love how Stephen King tells a story. How he paces it, how he structures it, how he presents it. It doesn't reinvent the wheel. It's not rocket science. It's just proper storytelling. Stephen King is the perfect author to take a break with. If you're in a very long book series, specifically fantasy, he's just good to take a break with and cleanse the palate. So let's talk about Carrie and the characters, the plot, and the pace. Carrie doesn't have a whole lot of characters. You've got Carrie, you've got her mother, you've got a handful of students and teachers and principals and, the occasional townsfolk. The story will change perspectives. You'll go into Carrie's mind, then you'll go into her mother's, and then you'll kind of take breaks with other students and teachers and listen in on their conversations and their perspectives of the Carrie situation. And everyone has something to say about Carrie. It all revolves around her because that's what the story's about. It's about her. But the main focus is on Carrie and her mother and that relationship. Let me just go throw this away. Got a nice cup of coffee. The relationship between Carrie and her mother was probably the most horrifying element in this book, in my opinion. Without giving too much away, because I like to keep things as spoiler-free as possible, her mother is a fanatic, is manipulative, is a bully. She's controlling and abusive. And I think she's crazy. She kind of reminds me of Annie Wilkes in Misery, right here. You talk about another fanatic. This one, right here. My goodness. I feel like Annie Wilkes and Carrie's mother could be sisters. The way they make your skin crawl. There are a few other side characters you get to spend time with, like some of the teachers, some of the bullies, But two in particular, Sue and Tommy. These two high school students have a heart, and I believe have genuine objectivity and care for Carrie. And Sue tries to do something nice. She realizes what she's done to Carrie over the years. Kind of has a wake-up call. There's an event in the beginning of the book that's quite traumatic for Carrie. And Sue realizes this. And I think this nice deed is the catalyst to the chaos and this horrifying event that happens at the end of the book. They just didn't know. They didn't know what would happen next. And I haven't even really talked about Carrie. Carrie is this high school girl. She's an outsider. She's a joke. Always made fun of, bullied, and pushed around, insulted. And of course, not only by high school students, but by her mother. Like, not really bullied in that way, but bullied in that controlling way. And Carrie's just in the middle of all of it. And she doesn't even really get to think on her own and use her own volition, because this tyrannical iron fist of her mother is just looming above. And one thing I love about Stephen King and his style of writing is how he paces and structures a story. Nothing ever overstays its welcome, at least in my experience of reading his books. Things are just paced right, and things move along really well. His stories aren't necessarily cinematic, but they kind of cut scene by scene. There's always like a back and forth. You cut to this perspective, cut to that perspective, and then it all kind of collides and meets at this climactic moment. And it's just so well done. He always keeps the intensity up by changing perspectives. And that's what he does in Carrie. Throughout the book, you are presented various perspectives, but also flashbacks and flash forwards. You are given hints or even told outright what happens next, or kind of what happens at the end of the book and where things lead up. There are newspaper clippings, there are police reports and police interviews, and then there's articles about, the science behind telekinesis. This book is a mystery, a puzzle, and all of these little aspects are pieces to that puzzle. And it just creates intrigue and intensity. You can't help but be on the edge of your seat. So one of the aspects of this book is Carrie's mind powers, which is not a spoiler because it's on the back of the book. She can move things with her mind. And you are given little glimpses and little hints to that throughout the book. And again, it just kind of creates this mystery, and you kind of ask yourself, ooh, what's going to happen next? Even though this story is told in our world, there are elements of world building that Stephen King uses and presents, specifically in regards to telekinesis and the future of this mind power that Carrie has. There are scientific documents and reports and interviews that beg the question, what happens next after this horrific event? What happens with telekinesis? How can we prepare for that? How will it affect people? How will the world respond to future children having this superpower? There's enough ambiguity and depth to this book that will make it worth rereading again and picking up on the little details. This book was so tragic. I would say all Carrie wanted was to be noticed and to be a person and to be treated normally. But maybe I'd go as far as to say she didn't know what she wanted because she was abused and manipulated by her mother. She was never given the free will and volition to live freely. She didn't really know how to live or enjoy life. She just kind of went through the motions and anticipated and flinched at the bullies and the insults. It makes me wonder if Carrie's mother wasn't the way she was, if she was loving, caring, encouraging, oriented to grace. I just wonder how Carrie would have turned out. Oh gosh, Carrie, no! That's a fast one. Gotcha! Telling you, when you live on the coast, spiders, they love it here. We see a spider probably every day. We had a spider living on our roof for a whole year. It's gone now. Ugh. Stephen King should write a book about spiders. This book just meshed so well. All of these elements. The fun thing about Stephen King's library of books, it's so varied. And there's different types of stories and different tones and themes. And it's fun to see people rank King's books differently. Like Misery, maybe in the 25th spot for someone, or the 5th spot. But for me, it's at number 1. And Carrie is definitely number 2. I would definitely recommend this book. If you were a Stephen King fan, or maybe trying to get into his work, try it out. This is a good start. Very good start. And like, if no one told me this was his very first book, I wouldn't have known. Like, all of the elements were there. And it left me wanting more, but in a good way. Whereas Salem's Lot, where are you? Really left me wanting more, but not satisfied. I might have to reread this again. Give it another shot. It's funny, every time I read a Stephen King book, I always have that urge to just binge all his books. They're like the perfect potato chip. You can't eat just one. I want another. Give me another. However, the next book I will be reading is Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is the book that won for my book club. Everyone voted, and Piranesi won. I know nothing about Piranesi, and people say that's a good thing. Go in blind. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm excited. In about 3 or 4 weeks, we'll have a live stream where we'll talk about it and hang out. Then I want to read, I don't know where the book is, but The Black Tongue Thief. I've been wanting to read that book that captures Dungeons and Dragons, that sense of adventure and goofiness and silliness and chaos. I'll also be posting the next book club poll in about a week or so to start voting for the book of July. It's definitely going to be 3 books that capture that summer feel. All right, that was my review or reflection on Carrie by Stephen King. And the question I asked in the beginning was, does this book hold up? Being the very first book that Stephen King wrote.